Beneath the waves lies a world as deadly as it is beautiful. Divers have ventured into its depths, trusting technology, training, and instinct. Yet sometimes, even that isn't enough. From a submarine that became an airless tomb, to a deep-sea dive plagued by a technical nightmare, and a descent turned deadly by lurking predators, each story reveals how quickly the ocean can turn from awe-inspiring to terrifying. These are the true tales of diving gone horribly wrong. In April of 2003, the crew aboard a Chinese diesel-electric submarine began what should have been a routine exercise in the Yellow Sea, a stretch of water bordered by North Korea and the Shandong province. They had performed similar exercises countless times, moving silently beneath the waves, their presence masked by the thick blanket of seawater above. But this time, the waters held an eerie secret, an invisible threat lurking within the very mechanisms they relied on for survival. Days into the exercise, a Chinese fishing boat encountered something bizarre floating along the surface. A single periscope, swaying with the rhythm of the waves but completely stationary. It looked as though it belonged to a ghost ship, drifting aimlessly with no sign of life or direction. The crew knew that this was not normal, especially for a submarine, which should have been diving or following a designated path. They radioed in their sighting, and soon the Chinese Navy arrived to investigate, cautiously approaching the silent vessel. As they boarded, the scene inside was beyond horrifying. 71 people lay motionless in the cramped, narrow corridors, every single crew member unresponsive, faces showing traces of bewilderment and final moments of helplessness. The disaster took an even darker twist when it was revealed that the submarine's stranded crew complement was only 55. However, on this mission, extra personnel, including high-ranking officials and trainees, had joined, making the confined quarters all the more crowded. It appeared that in the final moments, the victims had no idea that the very machine meant to protect them had sealed their fate. To understand how this tragedy unfolded, we have to dive into the inner workings of the submarine's diesel-electric system, a design meant to offer both stealth and power. When submerged, the submarine relies on batteries for propulsion, ensuring it can glide quietly under the water. On the surface, or near it, however, the diesel engine takes over, powering the submarine and charging its batteries. To do this safely, the vessel uses a snorkel system, an essential ventilation component that draws fresh air into the submarine while allowing exhaust gases to escape. But this system, which seems straightforward, can also turn deadly under the wrong conditions. The snorkel includes a safety valve designed to detect water and close off the airflow to prevent the engine from flooding. However, if this valve closes at the wrong time, say when the submarine is surfaced and running on diesel power, then air stops flowing in, and the crew inside unknowingly enters a sealed tomb. As experts examined the vessel, they found this valve may have been the fatal culprit, although the exact cause remains a topic of debate. Some suspect that the valve either closed unexpectedly or failed to open when the submarine surfaced. Without ventilation, the diesel engine would continue to burn through the limited air inside the submarine, creating a lethal trap. Here's where things become bone-chilling. Calculations show that if the valve failed, the diesel engine would have consumed the entire air supply within just 2 minutes. In the first minute, the crew would have started feeling lightheaded, unaware that precious oxygen was vanishing. By the second minute, all 71 people on board would have been unconscious, their fates sealed before they could even process what was happening. A minute later, every single person on board would have succumbed to asphyxiation, unable to fight against the invisible force overtaking them. Yet as haunting as these details are, the full story of what led to this horrifying discovery remains shrouded in mystery. Were there warning signs missed, or mechanical failures lurking beneath the surface? Or did the submarine's design conceal an overlooked flaw? These questions linger unanswered, leaving a mystery floating in the silence of the Yellow Sea. In 1975, off the chilly, turbulent waters of the North Sea, a saturation diving mission was underway, a job only the most experienced divers dared to perform. The diver's task was complex and critical, untangling a rope from a massive blowout preventer 390 feet beneath the surface. In the world of offshore oil drilling, blowout preventers are lifelines that control oil and gas wells. Any equipment that entangles them needs immediate attention. For this job, a specialized 3-chamber system, a combination of a diving belt, a transfer chamber, and living quarters, was lowered into the deep, unforgiving cold. After completing their work at the ocean floor, the divers began their ascent, returning to a depth of 310 feet. Where the diving bell connected to the transfer chamber. The chamber was like a small airlock, designed to transition divers back into the living quarters, a pressurized space that would protect them from decompression sickness or the bends by maintaining a pressure at extreme depths. But as they connected the bell to the transfer chamber, something went wrong. The seal, a critical component that prevents mixing pressures, wasn't closing properly. Attempts to fix the seal through cleaning and reconnection were made, and for a moment, it seemed like the issue could be contained. Then, a chilling sequence of events began to unfold. The supervisor on the surface, monitoring the diver's conditions and equipment, made a catastrophic mistake. Amid the urgent signals and flashing lights of the control panel, he mistakenly read the wrong gauge. Believing he needed to adjust the diver's environment, he began pumping helium into the chamber. This wasn't a minor adjustment. In mere minutes, the pressure inside the transfer chamber began to climb far beyond safe levels. The divers were suddenly plunged into an atmosphere thick with helium, as the pressure in their environment nearly doubled. Simultaneously, the temperature began to soar, rocketing from an already stifling 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit to a nearly unbearable 49 degrees Celsius or 120 degrees Fahrenheit. At this level of saturation diving, the humidity in the chamber was at 100%, meaning the heat was relentless and overwhelming. Without any ability to cool themselves through sweating, the divers were locked in a metal box where every inch of air was thick, hot, and inescapable. In the cramped space of the chamber, the divers quickly realized they had no way to regulate the unbearable heat. They attempted to cool themselves, pressing their bodies to the aluminum floor, hoping the metal surface might absorb some of the heat and provide relief. But the high humidity and relentless rise in temperature left them no refuge. As the minutes dragged on, the intense heat took a severe toll, the walls of the chamber closing in on them, trapping the divers in a metal inferno with no hope of escape. Tragically, the intense heat and pressure proved too much for the human body to withstand. Both divers perished from hyperthermia, the extreme conditions causing their bodies to overheat beyond recovery. These 2 divers became the first recorded fatalities from overheating in the grueling high-stakes world of saturation diving. A haunting reminder of how swiftly and silently technical errors in this line of work can turn fatal. In 1996, on a bright day at Cainbane Wall in St. Croix, 3 seasoned divers prepared to descend into the stunning underwater drop-off, one of the Caribbean's most striking sights. The wall was famous for its sheer vertical plunge. A mere 40 feet from the surface, the seafloor drops into a gaping 13,000-foot abyss, an alien world that few have explored, and even fewer understand. The divers, Brett, Robbie, and Rod, all experienced in handling the sea's unpredictable dangers, were there for research, equipped with the knowledge and caution such depths demanded. But on this dive, even their expertise couldn't prepare them for what lay in the shadows of the deep. As they descended to their target depth of 220 feet, something in the water stirred. Emerging out of the blue, 2 oceanic white-tipped sharks emerged, each an imposing 14 feet long. Known for their boldness and inquisitive nature, these predators are rarely shy around divers. But the trio was undeterred, continuing with their work while keeping a wary eye on their sudden companions. For a time, the sharks circled at a respectful distance, as though observing the divers with a calculated curiosity. But as the divers prepared to ascend, things took a terrifying turn. Out of nowhere, one of the sharks lunged toward Rod, jaws flashing in a relentless assault. In seconds, the calm of the dive shattered into chaos. Seeing his friend under attack, Brett didn't hesitate. He swam towards Rod, attempting to push the predator away, but in doing so, he unwittingly entered the shark's frenzied territory. The struggle between diver and shark pulled both men over the ledge of Cane Bay Wall, dragging them into the chasm below. In the confusion, the men's gauges spun wildly, surpassing their limits at 325 feet, and the visibility of the gauge dimmed into irrelevance as they tumbled into the depths. Rod bore the brunt of the attack. His leg was nearly severed, a wound so gruesome it left him rapidly losing blood. The sharks seemed unrelenting, their powerful jaws cutting through the water with lethal precision. Brett fought to hold onto Rod, desperate to pull him up from the grip of death, but the sharks had other plans. With a final strike, they forced Brett to release his friend, and just like that, Rod was gone, consumed by the dark waters below, his body torn and lost to the depths. Now alone, nearly out of air, and teetering on the edge of unconsciousness, Brett struggled to escape, pushing his remaining energy into his ascent. Each breath burned his lungs, and at a mere 30 feet from the surface, his strength gave out entirely. As his vision darkened, his last thought may well have been of his friend left behind, swallowed by the unfathomable abyss. By a stroke of luck, his buoyancy device inflated, carrying him upward until he broke the surface, unconscious but alive. On the beach, a miracle awaited him. By pure coincidence, a doctor and nurse were relaxing nearby, and they rushed to his aid. But Brett's ordeal was far from over. Due to his extensive injuries and rapidly deteriorating condition, the rescue turned into a complex, multi-stage evacuation. He was airlifted on a medevac plane, forced to make an emergency landing on a nearby highway, and finally transferred by helicopter to the hospital. It was an exhausting chain of events, but Brett made it to the hospital alive. As news of the tragedy spread, divers and marine experts were left to wonder what had drawn these normally wary sharks so aggressively close. Investigators eventually found their answer: low-frequency vibrations from a nearby ship. The pulses from its engines had rippled through the water, a sound that lured the predators and provoked them into an uncharacteristic frenzy. Cane Bay Wall had claimed another life that day, and as Brett recovered, the deep questions of why it happened remained, looming over the divers brave enough to venture into those waters again. But for those who know the sea well, the message was chillingly clear. What other dangers lay hidden at those depths, silent and waiting for those bold enough to cross their path?